The leather of my favourite armchair sighs under me, the only honest sound in this cavernous tomb of a study. Outside, the manicured lawns of the estate stretch towards the sunset, all paid for with the sweat and ruthlessness of 60 years. Denis O'Connell, self-made, iron-willed, or so they thought. Tonight, the iron feels brittle, cold against my bones. It started with a misplaced set of keys, a name slipping my mind, small things easily dismissed, even by me. But then I saw the look in my eldest son, Patrick's, eyes during the quarterly board meeting. Not concern, calculation. A vulture spotting the first tremor in the dying beast. That's when the idea took root, sharp and poisonous. What if they thought the old man was losing it? What if Grandfather Denis started forgetting? What magnificent, horrifying truths would that reveal? It began subtly, the performance of a lifetime. It paused mid-sentence, staring blankly at a grandchild's face, grasping for a name I knew perfectly well. The little one, Sarah's boy. It'd murmur, letting confusion cloud my eyes, watching Sarah's own eyes narrow not with worrying, but with a flicker of something else. Anticipation. I'd leave bank statements, carefully selected ones showing substantial, but not obscene liquid assets, lying open on the desk. Later, it'd pretend to search frantically for them, my hands trembling with manufactured fear. Patrick, have you seen the papers? The ones from you know, the bank people. His pat on the shoulder was heavy, patronizing. Don't worry, Dad. I filed them away, safe and sound. The lee was smooth, effortless. He hadn't filed them. Had photographed every page. The diagnosis, delivered by Dr. Armitage, a man handsomely compensated for his discretion and convincing bedside manner, was the spark that ignited the dry tinder of their greed. Early-stage Alzheimer's, Denis had said gravely, the words echoing in the too-quiet consultation room, with Patrick and my daughter, Eleanor, flanking me like prison guards. Progressive, I'm afraid. We'll need to discuss arrangements. I let my chin quiver, let my gaze become unfocused, drifting to the diplomas on the wall, if they were hieroglyphics. Inside, a glacier was forming, cold and implacable. The descent, according to their narrative, needed to be swift. So, I obliged. I wandered the east wing one evening in my pajamas, muttering about finding the stables long demolished. I asked Eleanor, her face tight with impatience beneath a thin veneer of concern, the same question about her son's graduation 3 times in 10 minutes. I saw her jaw clench, saw the text she surreptitiously sent. Hayes worse. Talking nonsense again. Need to move faster. Move faster. The phrase echoed in my hollow doubt chest. Then came the episode that cemented it. A family dinner. Roast beef like charcoal. Conversation brittle. I deliberately knocked over a crystal glass of Merlot, the blood-red stain spreading across the damask tablecloth like an accusation. I stared at it, then at my trembling, wine-stained hand, letting genuine tears well up, tears of rage, of profound disappointment masked as senile distress. I stammered, looking wildly around the table at my children, their spouses, the bored faces of the older grandchildren. Where's Margaret? Is Margaret coming? Margaret, my wife, dead 15 years. The silence was absolute, thick with discomfort and opportunity. Patrick cleared his throat. Mother's gone, Dad. Remember, long time now. Maybe it's best if you rest. Well, handle everything. Handle everything. The phrase was a death knell. Handling everything began immediately. The subtle suggestions became open directives. Dad, signing these papers would be such a weight off your mind. Eleanor purred the next week, sliding documents towards me. Power of attorney. Shifting control of the O'Connell Holdings portfolio to a family trust managed by Patrick. I pretended to struggle with the pen, making my signature a shaky scrawl, a pathetic imitation of the bold stroke that once closed million-dollar deals. I saw the triumphant glance exchanged between my children. The vultures were circling, landing. They moved me, said the main house was too much for me. Too many stairs, too many memories that might confuse me. They installed me in the gatehouse, a charming cottage on the estate grounds, conveniently out of sight. It felt like being shelved, stripped, My study in the main house, my sanctuary filled with first editions and the scent of old leather and pipe tobacco, was suddenly being renovated. My beloved vintage Jaguar, sold for your safety, Dad. You wouldn't want an accident. Patrick delivered the news with a smile that didn't reach his cold eyes. The car I'd restored with my own hands, gone, probably sitting in his oversized garage. The stripping was systematic, brazen. Eleanor helped me sort through my late wife's jewelry, just to catalogue it, Dad, for insurance. I watched her slip Margaret's emerald ring, the one she wore every day, the one he'd given her on our 25th anniversary, onto her own finger for safekeeping. She never took it off. My grandson, Ben, Patrick's boy, a sullen teenager who'd paid for at 3 elite private schools, started appearing at the gatehouse, not to visit, to borrow my rare, limited edition wristwatch just for a job interview. Grandad. A signed baseball from a legend I'd met decades ago and's a huge fan. I'll give it back. A small, valuable landscape painting from the cottage wall brightens up my dorm room. None ever returned. His excuses grew thinner, his attitude bordering on contempt. He'd feign confusion, mutter agreement, let him take them. Each theft another shard of ice added to the glacier in my chest. The money started flowing out faster. Unexplained withdrawals from accounts they now controlled. Patrick bought a new yacht needed for entertaining clients. Dad, good for the business you built. Eleanor and her husband booked a 6-month sabbatical tour around the world, first class everything. Then got a brand new sports car. My money, hemorrhaging out to fuel their gilded lives, while they parked me in the cottage with daytime television and microwave meals. The indignity was a physical ache. The sheer, naked greed was breathtaking. And then there was Maria Ortiz, my nurse, hired through a reputable agency after the diagnosis. She arrived quietly, a small, sturdy woman with kind, observant eyes and hands that were strong yet gentle. She didn't fluff pillows unnecessarily or speak in that sickeningly sweet tone reserved for the infirm. She treated me normally, respectfully. She'd help me with my exercises, ensure I took the harmless vitamins Dr. Armitage prescribed as part of the charade, prepare simple, nutritious meals. But she also noticed things. She noticed when my signed first edition of Hemingway disappeared from the cottage bookshelf one afternoon after Ben's visit. She didn't say anything, just quietly noted it in her meticulous daily log. She noticed Eleanor's new emerald ring. She saw Patrick's sleek new Range Rover roaring up the main drive. She heard the snippets of their conversations when they visited brief, duty-bound interrogations about my health, swiftly pivoting to discussions about property sales, stock transfers. The new wing Eleanor wanted to add to her house. One rainy Tuesday, it came to a head. Patrick stormed into the gatehouse, dripping on the rug, face thunderous. Dad, what the hell is this? He slammed a bank statement down on the coffee table in front of me. It showed a significant transfer to a conservation charity he'd quietly supported for decades. This account was supposed to be frozen. You can't just go giving away money like this. Who helped you with this? He leaned in, his breath smelling of expensive coffee and frustration. Was it her? He jabbed a finger towards the kitchen, where Maria was preparing tea. I let my eyes go wide, vacant. I fumbled with the paper, turning it upside down. The ducks, I mumbled, forcing my voice thin and reedy. Margaret loved the ducks in the park, always wanted to feed them. It was pure nonsense. A non sequitur designed to infuriate. Patrick exploded. Ducks. For God's sake, Dad, this is serious. You just threw away $500,000. Are you completely senile? The word hung in the air, ugly and final. He saw me flinch, a genuine reaction to the venom in his voice. He mistook it for confusion. Right, that's it. Maria, he bellowed. Maria appeared in the doorway, calm, wiping her hands on a towel. Mr. O'Connell. From now on, Patrick snarled, you are to monitor all his correspondence. Screen all phone calls. He's not to sign anything, understand? Not a birthday card. Not a check for the Dan newspaper. Nothing. And I want a full report of anyone who visits besides family, especially any lawyers. He shot me a look of pure exasperation. We can't have him squandering everything left because Hayes lost his marbles. Maria met his gaze steadily. Her voice was quiet but firm. I understand your concern, Mr. Patrick. My duty is to Mr. Denis' well-being and safety. I will ensure he is not taken advantage of. There was a subtle emphasis on the last phrase, a slight hardening in her eyes that Patrick, in his arrogance, completely missed. He just grunted, snatched the bank statement, and stormed out. Later, as Maria handed me my tea, her usual quiet efficiency restored, she spoke softly, not looking at me directly. The ducks in street, James's Park, Mr. Denis. Your wife mentioned them once. She said you took her there on your first trip to London, fed the ducks together. She placed the cup carefully on the saucer. A beautiful memory. I froze. Margaret had told that story, but only to me, only in private moments. How could Maria know? Unless she'd listened, truly listened, not to the ramblings of a confused old man, but to the fragments of a real life buried beneath the performance. I looked at her then, really looked. There was no pity in her eyes, just a deep, quiet understanding, and a flicker of something else, resolve. It was the first crack in my isolation, the first warmth against the pervasive cold. I didn't dare respond, just stared into my tea, the facade momentarily harder to maintain. The stripping intensified. They sold the Degas, a small, exquisite piece Margaret had adored. Patrick claimed it was to diversify assets, but I knew. I saw the listing from a discreet investigator it hired years ago, long before this charade began. A man loyal only to me and paid from an untouchable offshore account. It went for a fraction of its value to a private collector, a shell company later traced to one of Patrick's business partners. The betrayal was so blatant it stole my breath. Eleanor brought lawyers, shiny, soulless men in expensive suits who spoke slowly and loudly, explaining documents that would simplify the estate, essentially signing over the remaining prime real estate holdings to her and Patrick jointly. Just a formality, Dad, she soothed, her emerald ring flashing as she pushed the papers towards me. To make things easier later, her smile was radiant, devoid of any genuine affection. It was the smile of an heir apparent. I pretended to struggle with the pen, making shaky marks that weren't quite signatures, forcing them to guide my hand, their fingers cold and impersonal on my skin. The degradation was complete. They believed their victory absolute. Only Maria remained. She became my silent witness, my anchor in the storm of their avarice. She saw Ben try to bully her into giving him the code for the gatehouse safe. Grandad said I could have the coin collection. He just forgets. She firmly refused, citing Patrick's own orders about me not giving things away. She intercepted calls from suspicious investment advisors, suddenly keen to offer me once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. She documented everything in her log, her notations factual, unemotional, yet damning in their cumulative detail. To 15 p.m., Mr. Patrick visited. Stated Mr. Denis appeared agitated. Removed framed photograph silver frame. Beach scene. C. 1987. Did not return it. For 30 p.m., Ms. Eleanor called. Requested Mr. Denis's passport for safekeeping. Explained it was already secured, per previous instructions. Became argumentative. One afternoon, a different kind of visitor arrived. Father Dunn, the parish priest, a gentleman who'd known Margaret and me for 40 years. Patrick intercepted him at the main house, steering him towards the gatehouse with clear instructions. He gets confused, father, easily upset. Best not to discuss complex matters, or the past, just offer comfort. It was a warning. Silence the priest. Control the narrative. Father Dunn sat with me in the small sunroom of the gatehouse. Maria brought tea and discreetly retreated. He looked older, sadder. Denis, he began, his voice warm but cautious. How are you bearing up? He glanced around the room, taking in its simplicity compared to the opulent main house. This is cozy. I let the vacant expression settle, gazing out the window. The roses, I murmured. Margaret's roses, they need pruning, it was true. The once magnificent bushes near the terrace were overgrown. Father Dunn followed my gaze, then looked back at me, his eyes sharpening slightly. Yes, Denis, they do. Margaret loved her roses. He paused, choosing his words carefully under the weight of Patrick's warning. She loved you fiercely, you know. Talked about your strength, your determination. He leaned forward slightly, his voice dropping almost to a whisper. She also worried about the children, the money. She feared it would change them, consume them. He looked directly into my eyes, a flicker of something intense in his own. She prayed it wouldn't, but she saw the seeds of it, Denis. Even then, my heart hammered against my ribs. Margaret had said those things, in the quiet of our bedroom, in the years before the cancer took her. Fears she'd shared only with me and apparently, seeking solace, with her priest. This wasn't part of the script. This was real. This was Margaret reaching out from the past, confirming my darkest suspicions through this kind, brave man defying my son's edict. I couldn't speak. I just stared at him, the facade momentarily shattered by the raw wave of grief and vindication. A single, traitorous tear escaped, tracing a path down my weathered cheek. Father Dunn saw it. He didn't comment. He just reached out and placed his weathered hand over mine. It was warm, solid, a connection. Hold on to what's true, Denis, he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. Hold on to her, to the man you are. He squeezed my hand gently. God sees the truth, even when others are blind. He stayed a while longer, talking softly about inconsequential parish matters. But the unspoken message hung in the air between us, a lifeline thrown across the chasm of deceit. After he left, I sat for a long time, staring at Margaret's overgrown roses. The glacier in my chest hadn't melted, it had morphed. The cold fury remained, but beneath it surged a new current, purpose. Father Dunn's words, Maria's quiet integrity, they were the fuel. It was time. The performance needed its final act. The decline became more pronounced, more theatrical. I stopped recognizing Patrick once, calling him the tall man who takes things. I wept uncontrollably during a visit from Eleanor, not because of her, but because I pointed to a blank space on the wall and insisted Margaret's portrait was missing. It was safely stored. They were rattled, not by my deterioration, but by the unpredictability of it, the potential for embarrassing public scenes. The stripping became frantic, a race to grab everything before I truly became a liability or, worse, before I died, and a will they couldn't control came into play. They pressured Maria relentlessly, trying to get her to confirm my incompetence, to find hidden assets, to report any hint of legal consultation. She remained a fortress, polite, professional, unyielding. Mr. Denis is comfortable, she'd say. His needs are met. He has quiet days. She gave them nothing. Finally, the day arrived. Dr. Armitage, looking suitably grave, summoned Patrick, Eleanor, their spouses, and the older grandchildren to the main house library. Maria wheeled me in, my posture slumped, a blanket over my knees, my gaze seemingly fixed on nothing. The air crackled with tension and poorly concealed excitement. They thought this was it, the final assessment, the green light to plunder the carcass. Denis's cognitive tests show significant further decline. Armitage intoned, shuffling papers. The progression is aggressive. I'm afraid capacity. He let the word hang, heavy and final. Legal capacity is severely diminished. Decisions regarding his welfare and assets must now rest fully with the appointed powers of attorney. I saw the relief wash over Patrick's face, the greedy gleam in Eleanor's eye. Ben smirked. This was their moment. Absolute control. Patrick cleared his throat, stepping forward. Thank you, Doctor. It's difficult, but we must do our duty. We've engaged specialists, of course, and we'll ensure Dad receives the best possible care. He didn't look at me. He looked at the portrait of his grandfather above the fireplace, another self-made man whose fortune had spawned this nest of vipers. It was time. The facade had served its purpose. The evidence, meticulously gathered by Maria's logs, my investigators' reports, and the cold trail of their financial raids, was overwhelming. The glacier surged, filling me with a cold, clean power. I took a deep, slow breath, the first full breath he'd taken in months. My spine straightened against the back of the wheelchair. The vacant stare dissolved, replaced by the sharp, focused gaze that had once made competitors blanch. I lifted my head. My voice, when it came, wasn't the reedy whisper they expected. It was my own voice, strong, clear, commanding, the voice that built an empire. "Duty, Patrick?" I asked, the word cutting through the celebratory atmosphere like a shard of ice. "Is that what you call it?" The effect was instantaneous, electric. Patrick froze mid-step, his face draining of color. Eleanor gasped, her hand flying to the emerald ring. Ben's smirk vanished, replaced by stunned disbelief. The others stared, open-mouthed, as if a corpse had just sat up in its coffin. "Doctor." Armitage paled, taking an involuntary step back. Only Maria remained still, a quiet pillar beside me, a faint, almost imperceptible nod of acknowledgement in my peripheral vision. "Dad," Patrick choked out, confusion warring with dawning horror. "What?" "The doctor just said what the doctor said," I interrupted, my voice ringing in the sudden, tomb-like silence of the library. Was part of a very expensive performance, one I commissioned. I let my gaze sweep over them, each face a mask of shock, guilt, and burgeoning panic. Early-stage Alzheimer's, a convenient fiction, a test. Eleanor found her voice, shrill with denial. "That's impossible." "The tests, doctor." Armitage, the wondering, the confusion. "The tests were falsified," I stated flatly, looking directly at the doctor who flinched. "The wandering was staged. The confusion, an actor's craft, and a rather good one, wouldn't you say?" "You all believed it?" "Wholeheartedly." I leaned forward slightly, the blanket falling away. "You believed it because you wanted to believe it. You saw not a father, not a grandfather, but an obstacle, a vault to be cracked, a fortune to be divided." I pointed a steady finger at Eleanor's hand. "My wife's ring looks heavy on your finger, Eleanor. Did you even pause to remember her? Or just the appraisal value?" Her face crumpled, not in remorse, but in exposed fury. Patrick rallied, his face darkening. "This is insane. You're clearly unwell, Dad. Delusional, Dr. Armitage, sedate him." He took a threatening step forward. "Sit down, Patrick," I commanded, the steel in my voice stopping him cold. "Or you'll be removed. Permanently." I nodded towards the library door. It opened, and two large, impassive men in dark suits entered. Security personnel from my offshore holding company, utterly loyal, utterly unknown to my family. They took positions flanking the door. The message was clear. Control had shifted, irrevocably. "The performance," I continued, my voice cold and precise, "was to see your true faces, to see what my children, my grandchildren, were made of when you thought the old man wasn't looking, when you thought the money was finally within your grasp." I paused, letting the weight of their actions settle upon them. "You failed, spectacularly. Patrick, your diversification involved selling family heirlooms for pennies to your cronies. Eleanor, your sabbatical was funded by draining accounts meant for my care. Ben," I turned to my grandson, his face now pale with fear, "your borrowing spree amounted to grand larceny. The watch, the baseball, the painting, the coins you tried to bully Maria into giving you, all documented, all recorded." I gestured to Maria. "Ms. Ortiz logs are meticulous, as are the security camera feeds from this house, the gatehouse, even your own homes." Their eyes widened in collective horror. The scale of their exposure was dawning on them. "You saw weakness," I said, my voice dropping to a dangerous whisper, "and you descended like jackals. You didn't see a man. You saw an ATM with a fading memory. You didn't offer compassion. You offered greed, wrapped in the thinnest veneer of obligation." I looked at each of them in turn, imprinting their expressions of shame, fear, and defiant anger onto my memory. "You are not my legacy. You are my greatest disappointment." Patrick found his voice again, desperate now. "Dad, please. We were worried. We were trying to protect you. Protect the family fortune." "Protect it from whom?" I roared, the sound startling in the hushed room. "From me, the man who built it." "No, Patrick. You were protecting it for yourselves. squabbling over it before the body was even cold. I took another steadying breath, the cold fury channeled into absolute finality. The O'Connell fortune will not be squandered by vultures. The powers of attorney you tricked me into signing, forged under false pretenses, legally void. The property transfers, the stock sales, all fraudulent. My lawyers have already filed the necessary motions. Everything will be clawed back. Every painting, every dollar, every piece of silverware you pilfered. Eleanor whimpered. Patrick looked like he might be sick. Ben stared at the floor, his shoulders slumped. And as for your inheritance, I stated, the words falling like stones, consider it revoked. You are all disinherited. Completely. Permanently. You get nothing. Not a dime of the capital. Not a share of the companies. Not a brick of the properties. You forfeited it the moment you decided your dying father was your personal piggy bank. The outcry was immediate, chaotic. Shouts of "You can't do this. We'll fight it. He's insane" filled the room. The security men stepped forward, their presence silencing the immediate outburst, though the air vibrated with rage and panic. I let the storm rage for a moment, then raised my hand. Silence fell again, brittle and charged. There is one exception, I said, my voice softening only slightly. I turned to Maria, who stood silently beside my chair, her face composed, but her eyes bright with unshed tears. She had never wavered, never stolen, never lied for them. She had seen their greed, and shielded me from the worst of it with quiet dignity and profound integrity. She had treated Denis O'Connell, the man, not just the millionaire or the patient. Maria Ortiz, I said, my voice thick with an emotion I hadn't felt in years. Genuine gratitude. You came into this house of snakes and showed unwavering kindness, respect, and honesty. You saw their actions for what they were and documented them faithfully. You protected me when I appeared unable to protect myself. You treated me with dignity when they offered only condescension and greed. I reached out and took her hand. Hers was warm, steady. Mine, I realized, was trembling slightly, not with age or feigned infirmity, but with the raw release of the long, bitter charade. You asked for nothing. You gave everything your role demanded, and far more. I looked back at my stunned, furious family. Therefore, I announced, my voice regaining its strength, ringing with finality, I, Denis Alistair O'Connell, being of sound mind and body of fact thoroughly documented by independent specialists before, during, and after this regrettable experiment, hereby revoke all prior wills and codicils. My entire estate, every asset, every holding, every share, every dollar, I leave solely and entirely to Maria Ortiz. The silence this time was absolute, profound, the kind of silence that follows an explosion. Patrick's mouth hung open. Eleanor looked like she'd been slapped. Ben just stared, uncomprehending. Maria's hand tightened on mine, her breath catching in a soft gasp. Tears spilled freely down her cheeks now, but she held my gaze, shock and disbelief warring with a dawning, overwhelming emotion. You can't, Patrick finally choked out, his face purple with rage. She's a nurse, a servant. This is madness. We'll contest this. We'll destroy you in court. I met his fury with icy calm. Contest all you like, Patrick. The evidence of your fraud, your theft, your exploitation of a supposedly incapacitated man is overwhelming. Maria's logs, the security footage, Dr. Armitage's confession. The doctor flinched again. The financial trails. My lawyers are exceptionally well paid and exceptionally motivated. You'll spend every cent you've stolen, and then some, on legal fees before you lose. Utterly, publicly. I paused, letting the reality sink in. Your reputations will be ashes. Your comfortable lives, over. The choice is yours. Sink away with nothing but the clothes on your backs and the trinkets you haven't yet pawned, or fight, and lose everything, including your freedom. Forgery, theft, exploitation of the elderly, serious charges. The fight visibly drained out of them, replaced by a sickening realization of defeat. The security men moved towards them, not violently, but with unmistakable purpose. Time for you to leave, one said, his voice low and firm. All of you, now. They went, a broken procession. Patrick radiating impotent fury, Eleanor weeping angry tears, Ben looking lost and young. The library door closed behind them, muffling Eleanor's final, shrill curse. The silence that followed was deep, resonant, not the silence of emptiness, but the silence after a cleansing storm. I let out a long, shuddering breath, the tension of months, years, finally releasing its grip. The performance was over. Denis O'Connell was back, and he was exhausted. I looked up at Maria. She was still holding my hand, tears silently tracking down her face. She wasn't looking at the portraits, the shelves of leather-bound books symbolizing wealth. She was looking at me. Mr. Denis, she whispered, her voice trembling. Why? I don't understand. I didn't do anything. You did everything, Maria, I said, squeezing her hand gently. You were the only person in this gilded cage who treated me like a human being, who saw me, not the bank balance, who acted with honesty when surrounded by lies, who showed compassion without an agenda. I managed a weak smile, the first genuine one in a very long time. You earned this, not just the money, though God knows you deserve security for you and your family. You earned my trust, my respect, my gratitude. I paused, the weight of the decision settling not as a burden, but as a relief. This fortune, it poisoned my bloodline, turned my children into monsters. I won't see it do that again. I trust you to use it wisely, to do good, to live well, to remember that money is a tool, not a master. The enormity of it hit her then, the sheer, life-altering scale. She sank slowly onto the footstool beside my chair, still holding my hand, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs, not tears of greed, but of overwhelming shock, disbelief, and a profound, humbling sense of responsibility. I don't know what to say. Say you'll help an old man out of this damn chair, I said, my voice rough with emotion. And maybe we can finally get someone to prune Margaret's roses. She looked at me then, through her tears, and a small, tremulous smile touched her lips. A smile of shared understanding, of a strange, hard-won bond forged in the crucible of deceit and revealed truth. Yes, Emma. Denis, she whispered, wiping her cheeks. The roses, they've been neglected for far too long. She stood, offering her arm, not as a nurse to a patient, but as one human being offering steady support to another. I grasped it, leaning on her strength that had nothing to do with money and everything to do with character, and slowly rose from the wheelchair, the symbol of my deception and their betrayal. I stood tall, Denis O'Connell, finally free of the performance, free of the expectations, free of the poisonous legacy of greed. The future, for the first time in years, felt uncertain, daunting, but clean. And it started, not with millions, but with the simple act of walking towards the overgrown garden, arm in arm with the only person who had proven worthy of the trust, the only legacy that mattered.